The reality is that this was a blackmail operation pulled off by Bibi Netanyahu, because he said, we're going to do this, and if you don't join us, you're going to get hit. And I think there's some truth to that. Now, what should a president do when he's faced with that kind of choice? He was elected by the American people to do one thing, which is to act in the interests of his constituents. And if he's not tough enough to do that, then he's not tough enough to choose the right wars to fight, and he can't be trusted. We have a policy that's the Rothschild policy, the Epstein policy, that siphons money out of the physical economy and directs it to the swindles run by the billionaires.
Hey friends, that was HARLEY SCHLANGER. Have you heard the latest? You need just endure a little short-term pain for long-term gain. Hey, and in other news, you're a PANICON if you don't have Stockholm Syndrome, if you don't love your captors who continually lie to you while covering up the Epstein emails, while saying there's nothing to see here regarding the assassination of Charlie Kirk, if you don't love your captors who promised you no more wars in the Middle East, specifically no war with Iran, if you don't just suck it up and trust the plan, folks, you're a PANICON. You starting to get it? Welcome to psychological warfare, where if you're not a willing participant in the Milgram experiment, if you're not willing to inflict harm on others, well, you're a PANICON. Friends, thanks so much for tuning in. Let me help you break your conditioning. Before we start, just a quick word about a valued sponsor. We've all seen the headlines about those miracle weight loss shots, but the 2026 data is officially in, and it's a wake-up call. A major analysis revealed that once people stop taking those injections, they regain an average of 60% of the weight within a year. Even worse, most of that gain is pure fat, but the muscle they lost stays gone, leaving them with a crashed metabolism and a body that's functionally older than when they began. That's why I know you're going to be obsessed with today's sponsor, GLP-1 Elevate. Instead of using needles to override your body's system, it uses clinically studied plant-based ingredients like metabolate to help your body naturally boost its own hunger control signals. You'll get the same fullness and fewer cravings, but without the scary side effects or the metabolic rebound. GLP-1 Elevate supports your goals while protecting your muscle, so you can actually keep the results for good. To celebrate Valentine's Day, get 50% off GLP-1 Elevate at trimwithsgt.com. Every order includes a complete support bundle with free VIP coaching for life, a 60-day money-back guarantee, and free express shipping on subscriptions. Head to trimwithsgt.com right now to claim your 50% discount before it expires. The link is below. Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for being here. Sean from SGT Report. Guys, let me just say right out of the gate, my guest today, one of my all-time favorites, HARLEY SCHLANGER. And what he just said right before I hit record, folks, is you can't walk across the room without tripping over an Epstein body. And it's so true, folks. We're never going to let this go because now we're facing war with Iran with no easy way out, boots on the ground potentially. Hopefully that's coming off the table because it's absolutely insane. Meanwhile, in New York City, this is getting out on the airwaves. Mr. Trump, this Epstein thing is not going away. Why are you talking about Epstein? The Dow's at 50,000. No, sir. That's a hard no.
Something happened this morning, and I just need to, this is a moment in life that you probably want to pay attention to because this could be happening at your local radio station and everything else. So just listen to what just happened.
Whose daughter would move to New York and partner with Epstein. The same year he mysteriously fell off his yacht. 6 heads of Israeli intelligence at his funeral. Totally normal for a book publisher. During this same period, Epstein had an Austrian passport with his photo, but a false name and a Saudi address. That's not something you pick up at the post office. That's intelligence tradecraft.
That's intelligence tradecraft. Could you hear that okay, HARLEY?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? The truth is going to get out one way or the other. And all of this is starting to remind me that, guess what? Our omniscient, omnipotent, fearless rulers in Washington, D.C. are not infallible. In fact, Washington, D.C. is losing power right before our eyes. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly today. Harley, where would you like to begin?
Well, I'll just start with something that maybe will tickle some of your long-term listeners who have in the past accused me of covering up for some of the more evil people. One of the interesting things that's developing in the Epstein story is the role of none other than the Rothschild family. And you can't make this up. He had deep relations with some of the Rothschilds. He was introduced to Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, by Lynn Forrester de Rothschild. So here you have the heart of the uh, oligarchs, I guess is the best way to put it, the center of the oligarchical conspiracy, who were friends of Epstein and introduced him around. The names that keep popping up, it's not going to go away. And it can't go away because this is the corruption of our system. And when you see things like this war on Iran, which I hope we can get out of it without more damage, but the damage has already been done to President Trump's reputation. And I don't think he may not know it yet, but in the country, there's a turning point coming. And in fact, the turning point is now.
Well, let me just share this with you. Rothschild is all over the Epstein files. In fact, guys, one of the most famous emails, in my opinion, is from Jeffrey Epstein, quote, "As you probably know, I represent the Rothschild family." This from the Telegraph: "Don't leave me over Epstein links. Baroness de Rothschild urges bank clients." Are you kidding me, folks? Are you kidding me? And Donald Trump had the audacity in the White House to say, Epstein, we still talking about Epstein? Why are we talking about Epstein? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll never stop talking about Epstein because now it's evident the emperor has no clothes. Now, I think what I should do, Harley, is set the conversation up. Oh, by the way, Candace Owens is the IRGC's favorite American. Okay.
That's according to the Jerusalem Post.
Yeah, the Jerusalem Post. You know why? Because she's trying to figure out who actually assassinated Charlie Kirk. That's why Iran loves her so much, evidently. That's why Israel hates her so much, Harley.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why she's on the target list, but let's let's pray for her and her safety and that she has the courage to keep going.
What I'd like to do, and I very, very much want your opinion on this. I've been waiting patiently for this day to talk to you about this. I want to talk about this new war with Iran, which Donald J. Trump, when running for president, said he promised no new wars in the Middle East, specifically promising no war with Iran. And this is Jimmy Dore and Alex Jones discussing Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk's assassination, and Trump betrayals specifically in this clip. Now, the reason I want to play this, Harley, and then I want your opinion, is because I now see on X, with a lot of these same characters that don't seem interested in finding out who actually murdered Charlie Kirk, a lot of these same people are on board with this war with Trump, and they're telling us to trust the plan. In fact, those of us who are asking too many questions are being called panicons. Now, that's a new one to me, and that's how I know it's a talking point. Now, going into this clip, I'm going to quote Alex Jones, who just said, Jimmy,
I am screaming and yelling about every single bad thing Trump does. At the same time, I like him shutting down the border. I like him trying to stop war with Russia. But it's all negated with what he's doing now in Iran. Hopefully now he says he's back in office. He says now he knows his advisors are a bunch of lunatics. But, I mean, you can certainly get the lesser of two evil thing here. But just understand, I was not naive, my friend.
Oh, I mean, I haven't seen a bigger electoral fraud since I've been covering politics in my life than the Donald Trump presidential campaign. It's unbelievable, right? The whole thing was that he was the peace candidate. They were saying that for 4 years straight. Everybody, J.D. Vance, Stephen Miller, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Trump himself, constantly. I could play videos from now until next week of Trump saying how stupid it is to do Middle East wars, and we're not investing in our own country, and we're wasting trillions of dollars on all this stuff, and we should bring our troops home. And I've never seen anything like this. So, what I wanted to say, what I started to say when Kurt and I covered you lamenting over Trump and the Iran war was that I actually feel for you. You know, it's obvious that you were hoping, and that's what I was telling. I would tell people, I go, I have hope. I don't have faith in Trump, but I have hope that what he campaigned on, he's going to do some of it. And he did do some, like it did. He did close the border, which is kind of wild that you don't need to build a wall. Isn't that funny? It's like you just flip a switch and all of a sudden the border's closed. Isn't that amazing? You never needed a wall. So that's kind of amazing. So I'll give him props for that. No doubt. But everything else seems to be not working out.
All right, let me pause it there. I'm coming back to Harley. Harley, I wanted to play that whole clip because I respect Jimmy Dore, and I think he speaks now for millions of Americans who feel betrayed. Meanwhile, those of us who are asking questions are being called panicons. Your thoughts?
Well, I think if we take a step back and look at what's happening, Donald Trump may not like it, but this is bigger than Trump. And by that, I mean, Trump made promises. He inspired people with the idea that we're going to get rid of the deep state. We're going to clear out the leftists and the woke crowd. We're going to get back to doing what America does best. We're going to invest in manufacturing. He had a very a program that people wanted. And now we're seeing it crumble step by step by step because of one glaring error that he made, which is that he thought he was bigger than the people who he was fighting. And he didn't realize that you have to win the first fight if you're going to make the administration work. I don't know if you remember this, Sean, but the first time we spoke after his inauguration for the second term, you asked me whether I think this will work. And I said, the first thing he has to do is follow up what he said he was going to do in his first term, which is clean out the deep state.
Yep.
He's got to find all the actors, as many as possible, and remove them. And while he's doing it, he has to be very public with what he's doing. He didn't do it. There are too many of them still in there. He made his peace with them. He put them in his administration. And as a result, the decisions are being made that go against his brand and against what the American people want. Now, not all Americans have figured that out yet because the media still is completely corrupt. And programs like yours don't get nearly the volume to make up for the fact that the mainstream media is still able to trumpet either pro or anti-Trump stories, but that don't give people the real story. So I think when someone like Jimmy Dore comes on and Alex Jones, people should pay attention. Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, these are the people who helped Trump win a second term. And the fact that they're abandoning him now, and not because of anything about him, but about what he's chosen to do, to put the interests of the Zionist state ahead of the interest of the United States. There's no other way to see this war than that. And that gives you a sense of where you have to start if you're going to clean up the country. And I think you have that quote or the clip from Marco Rubio, which I think gets to something that shows that he's not in charge.
And that'll bring me to my clip from Tucker Carlson right after we play Marco Rubio's words from March 2nd.
So the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
Let me just pause it there. Look, having never been in the military, I'm just guessing that's good military strategy to attack a nation because one of your allies was going to attack the nation. So we better do it first because if our ally attacks that nation, then that nation's going to attack us. So we'll just go ahead and attack first. That's just brilliant military strategy, right, Harley?
Well, here's the problem with it. Did Trump really want to attack Iran or not? If he did, then don't hide behind it the way Rubio's doing. But the reality is that this was a blackmail operation pulled off by Bibi Netanyahu because he said, we're going to do this, and if you don't join us, you're going to get hit. And I think there's some truth to that. Now, what should a president do when he's faced with that kind of choice? Trump should have said to Netanyahu, if you do something like that, you'll not only never get another penny from us, another weapon from us, another bullet, another ounce of support from us, but we're going to make sure that your administration is finished because he has the power to do that. Instead, he let Netanyahu dictate to him what U.S. policy would be. And that's something that a president cannot do, especially a president who says he's standing up and fighting for the American people. He didn't fight for the American people if what Rubio said is true. And if it's not true, why is Rubio going out there and spreading this kind of nonsense?
Let me ask you a very important question before I play the clip from Tucker. Do you think that President Trump or any president truly has the power that you just described when we know Israel equals Rothschild, Epstein equals Rothschild, Rothschild equals BlackRock, our entire Ponzi economy is backed by these bonds, many of which are held by the world's wealthiest people? What if the threat to bring down our economy or our nation is so huge, given our $39 trillion in debt, that Trump has to go along? Every president has to go along because Israel equals Rothschild. Do you think there's any truth in that?
Well, I think that's what he's been told, and maybe that's what he believes. But he was elected by the American people to do one thing, which is to act in the interests of his constituents. And if he's not tough enough to do that, then he's not tough enough to choose the right wars to fight, and he can't be trusted. You know, if you take what you said in terms of financial blackmail, political blackmail, what's the president have as a capability? Get up before the people and tell them why you're doing these things, why you're taking these measures, and use the bully pulpit to organize support for what you're doing and show them you're doing it for them. Now, it's a tough fight because you're up against the media, you're up against the banksters who can crash the economy. But if they crash the economy, he's got things he can do to counter that as president. What he has to do is make sure he stays safe, but then act in a clear, transparent way to defend the American people. You remember sometime in his first term, he said, I could go out and shoot someone on Avenue of the Americas or 6th Avenue in New York and people would still like me. He had this sense that he was connecting with the voters, with the population. I think he's lost that sense. There are some people who will support him no matter what he does, and that's a tragedy. But if he really wanted to take on the deep state, you look at the cases you could use: the JFK assassination, the Martin Luther King assassination, 9/11, January 6th, what happened in 2008 with the economy. You could go through point by point what actually happened. Russiagate. Who ran Russiagate? Russiagate was an operation between British intelligence and Obama and the Obama team. Do you think Trump could convince the American people that Obama was bad? Of course he could. Is he scared of Obama? That's the question. He could have made that case, and he didn't have the right people around him. Pam Bondi is a joke. And that's the tragedy. He wasn't prepared to do what needed to be done if he really did want to carry out the tasks he said.
Well, and by the way, Susie Wiles, his right-hand man, literally worked for Bibi Netanyahu during his last campaign. And therefore, this question from Tucker Carlson, one of the most maligned men in America, because he actually cares about making America great, about putting America first, about finding out who murdered Charlie Kirk like Candace. Well, Tucker has a very good question. If we're going to lose control of the Straits of Hormuz, which we already have, and if Iran's not interested in a ceasefire, which they are not, stay tuned from the latest statement from the new Ayatollah, Tucker asks the very important question: why did we hitch the very future of our nation to Israel by embarking on this misadventure? And who made that decision?
This country has not, at least since the Second World War, handed any measure of operational control in a wartime theater to a foreign power. And why is that? Not because we don't have allies or people we like or people we share common goals with. We've got a lot of those, or we had a lot of those. But because no two countries' interests are identical. Even identical twins, if you spend enough time around them, are different in ways you can perceive. No two anything are exactly the same. And nations, which are complicated, don't even have that many points of intersection in their interests. There's a lot that separates the national interests of two separate countries. So if you enter a war co-joined with another country, you're going to reach a point very soon where your interests diverge from those of your partner. And in a war, the stakes are very, very high. So you would never do that, ever. If you cared about your country, why would you do that? And of all the things that historians will reveal in the aftermath of this war, the one that some of us should be paying the closest attention to is who made that decision? Who decided it was okay for the United States to be yoked to a foreign nation in the middle of a war with a country of 92 million people? That is one of the craziest things this country's ever done, and the people who decided to do it should be exposed and they should be penalized, because that single decision will cost, unfortunately, this is likely to be true, more American lives. It may extend this far past a point where the American interest is served.
I'll pause it there. Now, by the way, this sentiment from Tucker Carlson is being echoed by leaders in the Middle East, folks. Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf states are asking many of these same questions. Harley, this is an absolute disaster, and I don't think President Trump had any idea how bad this could get. I think it's far, far worse than the mainstream horror media in America is reporting, and I certainly think that there are probably more dead and injured than 150, which is now, I think, the official tally.
Russian intelligence a couple days ago leaked the death toll for the U.S. and is not real in this whole Epstein war. They are reporting 1,200 casualties. That is where Korean and German and Chinese news outlets are getting their around 1,000 number. And here is what I found out in everything I know. So this is what Russian intelligence is saying. 6 Israeli generals, dead. 32 Mossad agents, dead. 78 Shin Bet operatives, dead. 198 Air Force, U.S. Air Force, dead. 462 U.S. soldiers, dead. 11 of their nuclear scientists, dead, and 423 reserve guard dead. Now, what Iran said that gave us that 560 number was specifically coming from the U.S. Abraham Lincoln being shot by their missiles. That's how many folks were on that ship. They've also shot multiple bases. There were 160 soldiers at a naval base in Bahrain that were confirmed dead by Iran. I don't know how much we should trust Iran, but it's lining up with Russian intelligence. We know it's more than 6, so don't trust U.S. media.
This thing is an absolute disaster. Do I have that wrong? Because the cheerleaders are calling me a panicon.
Well, they're defending a failed policy. And, I could go through the list of the people that should be called to the carpet for this. You can start with Ratcliffe at the CIA, Rubio, Bissent, Huckabee, Lutnick. There are a whole crew of these guys who are tied to this Epstein crowd. Now, let me say something about why my colleagues and I wrote that pamphlet called The Empire Has No Clothes. What became clear to me after watching 6 years of media nonsense, trying to track down who were the girls that had been abused. And there were girls, boys, young people, older people, they were abused. Now, that was all we saw, though, in the press. They didn't ask the simple question, how did Epstein get this money? Who's sponsoring him? Who's protecting him? And that's what we started with when we asked the question, what was Jeffrey Epstein really? There it is. Now, by the way, notice the person who he's sitting there with.
Oh, Michael Milken, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Milken was the one who pulled together the laundered drug money from the organized crime and used it to buy corporations through junk bonds. People who were involved in funding Epstein were part of Milken's monsters. Now, it's a simple trace. It was very easy. It could have been traced, and it wasn't. Now, there's one of the criminals, Acosta, who became labor secretary. He was the one who, in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Southern Florida, he had an assistant U.S. attorney who had drawn up an indictment of about 100 indictable offenses in money laundering, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and so on. And instead, they went for 2 cases of prostitution, soliciting prostitution. Gave him a sweetheart sentence, and he was out of prison pretty quickly. So the point is, what do we see in the Epstein case? The extent of the corruption of what is now being called the Epstein class. It's Meyer Lansky right there who you're looking at. Lansky was the one who put together the money that went into the creation of the Anti-Defamation League, which is a terror organization that will attack anybody who tells the truth about the Jewish side of organized crime. And I didn't say all Jews are organized crime. I said there were Jews involved in organized crime, like Meyer Lansky. But the ADL would say that's anti-Semitic. Just like Alan Dershowitz said the attacks on Epstein were anti-Semitic. So, you're dealing with an unfair playing field. Now, there's Edgar Bronfman. His father, Sam Bronfman, was one of the people who got illegal booze from England during Prohibition. They built up a fortune, and that fortune went to the sons who became the legit businessmen who continued to launder money from organized crime activity to empower people on Wall Street. That's what Wall Street is right now. People like Peter Thiel, the eBay mafia, the PayPal mafia. All of a sudden, these guys are in with trillions of dollars of a bubble in artificial intelligence and the tech sector. How did they get there? Well, Epstein was one of the fixers for that. So you just peel the onion and you go step by step. And that's why I said you can't walk across the room without tripping over Epstein. He was into everything, everything. Prince Andrew or Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He was involved in covering up for arms trafficking. He was, in fact, the leading arms trafficker in Britain, except the one guy ahead of him was King Charles. This is a story that just gives you a sense of the rottenness, Sean. In 2010, we saw what was called the Arab Spring in many of the Arab countries, where the people in the streets were demonstrating against their rulers. And their rulers were mostly oligarchs who made a lot of money in oil and had connections with London banks. So there was an uprising against it. But the uprising was fanned and supported by the Agency for International Development, USAID, the National Endowment for Democracy, and MI6. MI6 operatives, British intelligence, were in the street with them, trying to overthrow governments. Now, once those riots were suppressed, then Prince Charles was sent around to all the governments that had been attacked and sold them weapons to suppress the people that his own intelligence services organized to go out into the streets. That's the kind of evil corruption, satanic outlook that's represented by the Epstein class.
Sorry for a quick break, guys. Friends, if you're getting to that age where your body just feels sluggish and off all the time, then listen up. Our friend Dr. Josh says all of that may be signs of a clogged liver. You've probably heard about how important your liver is for detoxification, digestion, and energy. But here's the thing. Most people have no idea how clogged and overburdened their liver actually is. Essentially, a healthy liver equals a healthy you. That's why Dr. Josh, a practicing doctor with over 25 years of medical experience, formulated a special liver supplement called Ultra Liver that acts like a deep cleanse for your entire body. Say goodbye to chronic fatigue, bloating, and skin issues, and say hello to renewed energy, clearer thinking, and a body that's operating at 100%. So if you're ready to unclog your liver, flush out toxins, and finally feel like your body's running the way it should, go to tryultraliver.com/SGT and grab your bottles today. Right now, Dr. Josh is running a special sale up to 50% off, but only through the link below this video. Do yourself a favor, take back control of your liver, your energy, and your life.
That's the kind of evil corruption, satanic outlook that's represented by the Epstein class.
let me just say, and I'm sorry to interrupt, you continue, but
No, go
that's
ahead.
exactly why I'm so shocked that people are so apt to take the $7,000 and bend the knee. Or many of these influencers on X, they'll bend the knee because they don't want the algorithms coming after them. They don't want the IDF coming after them. They want their platforms monetized. They want their reach. So they'll bend the knee and go after Tucker and Candace all day long. And it's very clear who they're working for. It just shocks me how easily people can be bought, Harley.
Well, that's the degeneration. The moral core is rotten in this country. That's why someone could be involved in sex with babies and all kinds of criminal activity, and people don't even bat an eye.
That's right. But you know what I was driving at is really, I didn't complete the thought. It's that you
Yeah.
can't make a deal with the devil. So, case in
Yeah.
point, you can't make a deal with King Charles, best friends with Jimmy Savile. He'll double cross you. So, that's what you're talking about with the Arab Spring. They double cross humanity every single time. And I feel like humanity's been double crossed. I feel like we, the people, have been double crossed with this Iran war. I can tell you this, my line in the sand is dropping bombs on two girls' schools. My line in the sand is sending my 19-year-old to another quagmire war for Israel. Harley?
And another quagmire war in which they're going to be assigned killing children.
That's right.
I mean, the line in the sand, if people look at Gaza, and to say this doesn't mean I support Hamas, but I understand that Hamas was fighting in an impossible situation where there was an occupation. And once the decision was made, Netanyahu provided the funds for Hamas to grow to counter the Palestinian Liberation Organization. This is another one of those cases where both sides were funded by Israel. And they were funded for the purpose of having them fight each other, and if necessary, to have a target for the Israel Defense Forces to go after. The same thing, look at Syria. All of a sudden, we're friends with the guy who was a leader of Al-Qaeda, who was shown in videos chopping heads off. Now he puts on a three-piece suit and he's considered the great moderate, the moderate rebel. This is what Obama did. Obama funded the so-called moderate rebels in Syria who were Al-Qaeda and ISIS terrorists who had been created in prison camps in Iraq after the Iraq War.
But is there a through line there? What's the through line for listeners? Because this stuff gets so difficult, even if we've lived through it and we have the perspective of history, right? This stuff gets difficult to keep track of. So the through line in the case of Obama is that Obama is a creation of the CIA, and the CIA and the FBI are, I think at this point, wholly owned lock, stock, and barrel by the deep state. I'd like to be wrong about that. I don't think I'm wrong about that. But the through line in this case, I think all roads lead back to Rothschild.
Well, what LaRouche said, it all goes back to London. And when you're talking about London, you're talking about the Rothschilds, Barings Bank, Barclays, Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. The Hong Kong Shanghai Bank was set up after the Second Opium War, when the British sent their fleet to force the Chinese to accept opium from India in order to cover the balance of payment deficit. I mean, like I've studied this for my whole life, basically, as a historian. So I know what you're saying, that it's sometimes hard for people to get pieces here and pieces there and put it together. But if you put it together, we have two basic systems at war. One is the American system, and we're now about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, which was a breaking point in history. It was an anti-colonial revolution. Who was it against? The British Empire of the British East India Company and the London banks and the aristocrats. And if you look through history, what you'll find is the United States was a shining example of a break from that. But that's why we had so much trouble, because the British kept coming back trying to undermine it one way or another. And they finally figured out after World War I, the way to undermine it was to recruit the American elite, the American establishment, the Harrimans, the Bushes, the Arm& Hammers and others, recruit them into a pro-British Empire position. And that's what the Council on Foreign Relations is, the American extension of Chatham House and British intelligence. These are the ones who ran Russiagate against Trump, because when Trump won the election in 2016, What was he saying about the deep state? He was going to shut it down. And he had evidence, tremendous amount of evidence, that the deep state was largely coordinated through the GCHQ, which is the National Security Agency equivalent in Britain, and MI6. That's where Christopher Steele came from. They were deployed to get Trump. And who did they go to do that? John Brennan and Barack Obama. And I'll say something more on Obama. He was not just an FBI CIA plant. He was there for the bankers. You remember, Sean, when the collapse hit at the end of the Bush administration in 2008, and Obama came in, what did he do? He continued the bailout of the swindlers that Bush had done, and he went before the banking community. Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase organized a chance for him to address the bankers. And Obama said, "I'm the one standing between you and the pitchforks."
Oh, that's right.
And he did everything he could to make sure there would be no banking swindler who would go to jail. And meanwhile, 6 to 7 million families lost their homes because of the swindles that were pulled off by the banks. And 20-something trillion dollars in bailout funds went into the pockets of the swindlers.
Unfortunately, I don't think we've seen the worst of that, because these people, well, they still wield control. I mean, look at Howard Lutnick.
Yeah.
Lucky Lutnick, I guess it was his child's third day of school, not even the first day, but for the first time ever, Howard decided to take his child to school. Therefore, he didn't go down with the ship when Cantor and his 658 employees all perished on 9/11. By the way, guys, we haven't talked about this. When I mentioned Rothschild equals Israel, Rothschild equals Epstein, well, Trump is in these emails, and I'll just let you read this for yourself. I don't want to cast any aspersions that may or may not be true. I can't prove this to be true. Kash Patel says nobody trafficked anybody to anybody in the case of Epstein. Meanwhile, Donald J. Trump is in these emails. And I want to circle back to this in just one second. When we see the word PANICON being tossed about and all this kind of trust the plan stuff over on Twitter, I want to circle back to this Erica Kirk piece. But I think it's important that we play this. Now, Harley, they're heavily censoring footage coming out of Israel that show the level of destruction. They're heavily censoring footage of destroyed U.S. military bases throughout the region. They're heavily redacting and censoring video that may suggest one of our aircraft carriers was hit. So with all that said, Iran is already in control of the Straits of Hormuz, and they don't want a ceasefire. This is the demands of the new Ayatollah, and I think people need to listen very, very carefully, because boy, did Trump get us in a mess here, folks.
He laid out 3 demands. The full text of these demands was transmitted to the State Department through Switzerland. Most major networks reported that Iran called for American withdrawal from the Middle East. That is accurate but incomplete. What they did not report is the specific language Khamenei used and the exact timeline he gave. Demand 1. All American military forces must begin withdrawal from Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia within 30 days, not eventually, not after negotiations, within 30 days. Demand 2. The United States must lift every sanction imposed on Iran since 1979, including all banking restrictions, all oil export limitations, and all technology transfer bans within 60 days. Demand 3. The United States must pay reparations to Iran for what Khamenei called the economic war that has cost Iran over $800 billion in lost revenue over the past 4 decades. He set the figure at $500 billion to be paid over 10 years. Then came the part that has the Pentagon in crisis mode. Khamenei said if these demands are not met, Iran will take 3 specific actions. Action 1. Iran will close the Strait of Hormuz to all commercial shipping effective immediately upon the expiration of the 30-day deadline. Action 2. Iran will activate what he called defensive military partnerships with Russia and China, including the possibility of foreign military bases on Iranian soil. Action 3. Iran will exercise its right under international law to develop and deploy a full-spectrum nuclear deterrent capability. He did not say Iran would pursue a nuclear weapon. He said Iran would deploy one. That language matters. It suggests they already have it. While Khamenei was delivering this address, something else was happening. Chinese state media released a statement at exactly 1:15 a.m. Eastern Time, 90 minutes after Khamenei finished speaking. The statement said China recognizes Iran's legitimate security concerns and supports Iran's right to defend itself against foreign aggression. It called for immediate negotiations based on respect for Iranian sovereignty. Russia issued a similar statement 40 minutes later.
All right, I'll pause it there. So Russia and China are firmly in the camp of Iran. Iran does not want a ceasefire. And Harley, this is the very best example I can think of cutting off your nose to spite your face, because none of this needed to happen. None of it needed to happen, and here we are.
Well, it was based on bad intelligence and wishful delusional thinking. It's the same kind of thinking. If you go back to the Ukraine situation, remember the president said he could get this done in one day. Now, what was he missing there? The whole point of the Ukraine operation was to try to tie up Russia, to break apart Russia. The British Empire has been at war with every nation that asserts its sovereignty. It's not for nothing that we hear the fight is between the free market and the globalists versus sovereign nation states. What is the job of a government of a sovereign nation? It's to represent the interests of its people. And it can do it through a parliament, a Congress, however. But that's what's starting to happen in the global South. Countries that were previous colonies are actually studying the traditions of the American system. How we came after the revolution against the British Empire. We were broke. We had a huge debt, probably comparable to where we are today. And what did they do? Hamilton took the banking system away from the British Empire and set up a national bank. Now, they did take deposits from all sorts of people, but where that money went and how it was directed as credit was in the hands of people who were the supporters of the American Revolution. And it went into infrastructure, into manufacturing, and we built a nation. And that has been targeted ever since. And every time another nation goes with the American system and starts to grow, it becomes a target of this Anglo-American empire. This is what happened to Libya. Gaddafi wasn't a great guy, but he was building his country. Saddam was doing the same thing. Assad was doing the same thing. These are people who tried to take the resources of the country and put it to work, building a productive base for the economy. That's how the American system worked. And we got ourselves out of Revolutionary War debt in a very quick period of time. And we could do it again because we have resources, we have personnel, but we don't have the right policy. We have a policy that's the Rothschild policy, the Epstein policy, that siphons money out of the physical economy and directs it to the swindles run by the billionaires. And who do we keep hearing about, whether it's in war fighting, the billionaires, the Peter Thiel of Palantir? And what are they doing? They're building a security state, a surveillance state, the digital ID card, and so on, to make sure that whatever you try to do, they'll be one step ahead of you. And that's who, unfortunately, is calling the shots for the Trump administration. And that's what has to change.
Amen. Let me say one last thing about panicons, and I want to share this. The mental gymnastics to which some of these folks are willing to go in terms of kind of cue follow the plan stuff and white hats in control, it's really astounding to me. And what I want to say about anybody questioning what's going on right now and being accused of being a panicon, panicking because you're not trusting the plan. Let me just say this. I think I would have been one of the subjects in the Milgram experiment that did not willingly hurt others because I don't like authority. I don't like authority asserting control over the way I think. Now, I don't know. Maybe I would have gone along with the crowd, but in this case, I will not go along with the crowd. I will not suffer Stockholm syndrome and trust the plan when the man said no war with Iran. He's covering up the Butler PA assassination. He won't let that be investigated. He's covering up the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He won't let that be investigated. He's covering up the Epstein emails. He just promoted Erica Kirk to this Air Force Academy Board of Visitors thing, and it makes zero sense. Now, here's mental gymnastics. Instead of investigating who really assassinated Charlie Kirk, and by the way, all roads lead to the military-industrial complex and Erica Kirk's ties to Fort Huachuca and her mother's ties to the military. This is all very clear at this point. Candace has the receipts, folks. But the mental gymnastics here are now Trump can investigate Erica Kirk because he put her on this U.S. Air Force Academy board. So now he can reveal the truth about Erica Kirk. Are you kidding me, folks? That's Stockholm Syndrome, in my opinion. And we can talk about other cheerleaders in the space like Prometheus Action, Susan Kokinda, who's basically now making excuses for Zionism, and now people that call the rest of us panicons can quote Prometheus Action as a reason we should continue to trust the plan. You guys should read this about Erica Kirk. Oh, now Trump can investigate her. Now Trump can reveal who she really is and who she works for. Are you kidding me? Harley, I'm sorry. I just feel like a lot of our friends, neighbors, and colleagues might be suffering from Stockholm Syndrome.
Well, it's not surprising. We've been under a mental, psychological warfare attack that goes back to the end of the Cold War, or actually to the end of the World War II, with the creation of a number of institutes, including Tavistock Institute, the MK Ultra of the CIA, drug, rock, sex, counterculture. The American people were a laboratory for this, a total laboratory. And now what people like Peter Thiel of Palantir and Alex Karp of Palantir are saying is we can know in advance, if we have all the data, your health data and so on, we can know in advance how you're going to think and react. So we can now control you before you get the impulse. It's called pre-bunking. Instead of waiting till someone gets a bad idea and you talk them out of it, you create in their mind an incapability of thinking of anything except the so-called plan. That's the ultimate social control. And that's what the whole tech sector and artificial intelligence is aiming towards. You know, people are worried that it's going to have robots shooting people on the street. Worse than that, it's going to have a culture that scrubs your brain so you can't think anymore. That's the danger we face.
Let me ask you about this interesting PDF you sent me, The Empire Has No Clothes. Are we free to distribute this, or is it a pay-per-view?
It can be distributed. I've been sending it out. If people write to me, to my email address and ask for a copy, I'll send it to you. What we'd like to do, obviously, is get people to see the kind of intelligence work that Lyndon LaRouche initiated 40 years ago with the Executive Intelligence Review. I got just that picture there, Tony Blair and Michael Milken. Blair is an international war criminal, no question about it. And yet he just got $350 million from Larry Ellison to run the Tony Blair Global Initiative to convince Africans that they don't need energy, they don't need clean water. All they need are rakes and hoes and freedom, the freedom to live out in the sun. You know, Blair worked with Michael Milken. Blair worked with Mandelson, who was the aide to Starmer, who just was arrested. These guys are a criminal class. And the important thing about what we did with the Epstein report, and this was my conscious effort and the effort of my colleagues at the LaRouche organization, we wanted to show why there was this cesspool of corruption at the heart of the government. And people who noticed the smell were right, but they didn't know where it was coming from. Now we can show you. We can show you the depraved figures, the ones who will kill children, the ones who will build weapon systems that can be targeted to blow up a school with 160 young girls there. These are the people who don't give a damn for human life. And I know, Sean, you've been talking about this for a long time, the evil satanic mental state of this oligarchy. Well, now we have the names, the games they played. It's all there. I want people to read it. So if you want to get a copy of that, send me an email with your address. Send it to harleysch@gmail.com, and I'll send it to you. But then we'll call you back and try and get you to subscribe for a really cheap price to the Executive Intelligence Review, so you can get the ongoing intelligence day by day. We have a daily report that comes out. You can start it for $10 a month. So I think if you read this report, you'll see what you're missing by not subscribing to us and working with us.
Yeah, and I will leave the links below. Last observation I want to share with you in the audience. Israel and the United States picked a fight with Iran, and guess what? Iran wants to punch that schoolyard bully right in the mouth so this never happens again. Now, reports are that this is Bibi Netanyahu's home that you see on fire there, and reports are his brother was in that home, his brother's dead. Reports are Ben-Gvir, an Israeli minister, is dead. Reports are David Barnea, Mossad chief, is dead. There are other high-level Israeli leaders who are reportedly now dead. So Iran is certainly exerting its pound of flesh. Now one wonders, did they get Bibi Netanyahu too? And we know, even if they haven't killed Bibi Netanyahu yet, that is on their list of things to do. So this war is far from over. If anything, it's only getting more serious by the day, Harley. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I really can't make a prediction where it's going to go, except to say it will be unpredictable. And it should have been seen as an unpredictable situation from the start. But we have arrogant people like Pete Hegseth, who thinks that he was selected by Jesus to lead the second coming, the crusade. And that's the kind of arrogance that leads to these misjudgments and these mistakes and blunders. And all of us pay for it. We pay for it in the form of higher taxes, higher gas prices, children getting drafted. Here in Germany, there's a huge effort by Merz, the chancellor, who's from BlackRock, again, from the financial sector, who's trying to have a mandatory conscription. And you can drive out in the streets on Fridays and see hundreds of school kids demonstrating against being drafted because they don't want to go to Ukraine or to Southwest Asia to fight a war on behalf of London or Israel. So we've got to have the common sense, the critical thinking to recognize what the enemy is and what the enemy is afraid of. And what are they afraid of? People acting like citizens of a sovereign republic. That's what it is. People asserting their creativity and their God-given talents to act for the benefit of mankind as opposed to being servants for the billionaire class. That's what the fight is, Sean.
It is, and I apologize because I should have asked this earlier on. It's one of the most seminal pieces of this entire discussion. That sit-down interview when Tucker traveled to Israel and sat down with U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, and Mike Huckabee let the cat out of the bag that, yes, the deed to the land he's referring to is biblically ordained in the book of Genesis, and the deed belongs to the Rothschilds, the Khazars, whoever claims they're Jews that have power. And I guess in terms of the greater Israel project, Harley, Huckabee said they could take it all. They may as well just take it all. That
he said
really,
it would be fine with us.
That's right. It would be fine with us if they took it all.
It would be fine if they took it all.
Well, I want to give kudos to Tucker because he's doing the work that we should all do.
Yeah, amen. That's why he's maligned. Enemies number one and number two, evidently, guys, are Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. Depends on the day who gets number one spot in that one. Yeah, they don't like anybody telling the truth or asking questions about this. And if you don't trust the plan, you're a PANICON. I reject that. I reject that, just like the parroted sound bites we hear from the mainstream media, like, we just need a little short-term pain for long-term gain, Harley.
That's a good one, yeah.
They're just criminals.
And who's going to have the short-term pain? It's going to be us, and then we'll find out it's going to be chronic.
Yeah. And then when you send your son over there to fight in this quagmire and he doesn't come back, you'll have long-term pain. I reject it out of whole cloth, and I refuse to suffer from Stockholm Syndrome when I've been lied to. I didn't vote for any of this. Our guest has been Harley Schlanger LaRouche. Thank you, Harley.
Thank you, Sean. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, even when the topic is so grim.
Well, look, that's your job. You were born for this, Harley. We appreciate you. That's why we look to you so often for your advice, your sage advice. Guys, the links are below. Harley Schlanger's been our guest. God bless you, sir.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, friends, if you're still with us, we appreciate you very much. You're not a PANICON if you're questioning what's going on here. And if you have a teenage son If you have a college-aged son, if you have a son, I think below the age of 28, he's at risk, folks. We're all at risk, and I, for one, will not send my treasure to perish in a war for Israel. For Real News 24/7, hit us up at sgtreport.com. That's the antidote to corporate propaganda. And until next time, folks, God bless you and yours. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
You're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
As you guys already know, that was Mike Huckabee, U.S. Ambassador to Israel. Here's his daughter, Sarah.
We are here to welcome one of the conservative movement's most talented, most outspoken, and most faithful leaders, Erica Kirk, to our great state. We're so proud to have her, and we're so proud of the incredible work that she is doing to help encourage students across the country to engage and join Club America, which we're launching here in Arkansas, and we're just honored to have you.
Thank you. God bless you. We're so grateful, and thank you for honoring Charlie and his legacy and his mission to have a Club America on every high school chapter across the country. So God bless you guys, and thank you.
It would be fine if they took it all.